Hello, we at Guildford Nursery School are going to spend a little bit of time with you now talking about how and why we do gardening with very young children, and we'll be looking at the benefits for that with you. With me are my colleagues, Liz and Jackie, who have all the answers.
So for Frobel, the garden was absolutely central to the nursery. His garden was a place for activity, curiosity, investigation and play. And he saw it as a place where children could be at one with nature. And so he was very keen on first-hand experiences, finding out the effects of sun, shade, wind and rain, and investigating the animals and plant life. And at the top, you can see his first kindergarten in Bad Blankenburg, and then an interpretation in San Francisco from the early 20th century. And in both of these gardens, the children have their own individual plot of land because that was what was essential to his learning for children. And if you look also at his mother songs, the child is very much in the centre. He wrote a lot about gardening and nature in those. And you can see in the illustration here that the child is right in the centre of the garden. The adult is very far in the background and the child has control. They are in their element in nature. And that's something that we have been really keen to do at Guildford Nursery School.
So would you say this is a little bit, showing you the freedom with guidance that one of Frobel's principles?
Absolutely. And as we go through the slides and we talk about our project, how that changed over the course of time and how children got to take on their own responsibility through being involved in the gardening project.
So what we're showing you now is the photos from our town centre site, which has got a walled, quite a small garden actually, rather than our larger site, which has obviously a lot of space. So this was right at the beginning, wasn't it, Jackie, with nothing there?
Yeah, so it was a bit of a blank canvas, and we wanted some more space for the children to be able to grow vegetables and other plants. And so we had some raised beds put in along this wall, as you can see.
What are the benefits of having raised beds as opposed to us having dug up the tarmac and just had, soil as in like a flower bed type thing you might have in your own garden?
So they're at quite a good level for children to be able to see and to be able to work at in standing up. We had to be careful on the width of them so that the children actually could reach into them. It also gives a designated area for the children to garden, so they know that those are the special places where the plants go. And we also have a separate digging area where they can just choose to dig when they want to.
So that's where they can dig their holes, look for their slugs, etc. Whereas here it is for gardening purposes.
Yes.
And that's, So there are some plants or vegetables and fruit, aren't there, that are really successful to grow with children, and others that are completely a lot less so.
Yeah, I think you have to be brave because there's a bit of a misnomer that actually everything will come to fruition in the summer holidays. And I think we were worried about that at first, but actually with a bit of careful choice and a very helpful caretaker who watered for us over the summer, we were able to kind of keep things going and harvest on into the autumn. We will talk about the potatoes, which is the bottom left photo, and they were a huge success because they're quite quick. We grew them in bags, they were quite easy to grow. The courgettes at the top were also quite spectacular in their growth, and also the fact that if you leave them for a second they turn into an enormous marrow. And also quicker wins such as the radishes at the bottom, which actually come, it's about 2 or 3 weeks, Jackie?
About 4 weeks you can go from seed to radish.
Oh, that's quite,
so that's quite satisfying for
the
child because they can actually see something happening quite quickly.
And I think that's possibly one of the downsides and the pros for raised beds. I remember you saying that they need a lot more water because they're not getting water from underneath.
Yeah.
But of course that means that the children almost can't overwater them, presumably.
I think you can't really overwater. they do need quite a bit of watering, and when they if they're using the hose, obviously you're getting quite a bit of water from there, but a lot of the time they're using their little watering cans, and so they'll keep going and filling up.
Which is ideal for this age, who like to do the same thing over and over again anyway, and everybody wants a turn.
You can't really overwater that way.
We did take a bit of thought about where the raised beds were situated in the garden so that they would get plenty of sun, and just the optimum growing conditions. So that was also part of that planning stage, because those are our biggest resource and our most expensive, but actually they will be worth their weight in gold and will last for some years to come. So.
These were some of our crops from last year. We grew beans, courgettes, obviously we got quite a few radishes, and then a lot of these were ready before the summer holiday, which was great because we could then start to pick them and use them, and the children got to taste some of them, we cooked some of them. So
the children are seeing the whole cycle, aren't they?
Yes.
Which does fit in, doesn't it, with Froebel's concept of unity and connectedness.
And I think that's one of our challenges going forward. So I know, Jackie, you've thought much more about gardening this term as opposed to a spring and summer term activity. And actually that is the challenge of having, there is always something growing in the garden, and there are vegetables like onions and garlic that you can plant now and will be really successful. So it is quite a challenge to not make it a kind of thing you do in the summer term.
Yes.
But actually integrate it into your practice all of the year round.
And you were saying that only this afternoon, weren't you, Jackie, about actually getting the children to help prune the bushes down, to weed, to do all that preparation work that is often done at this time of year, which is really important anyway for children, not to just see, as you say, gardening is something about growing it. Actually, sometimes it's about preparing it all properly as well, making sure that your soil is all prepared, ready for your vegetables to go in. I like the fact that they planted some pumpkin seeds this afternoon and we're already digging them up to see if they've grown.
Yes.
These are
very hopeful.
These are our new children, obviously, who have not yet experienced the need to wait. Now, you talked earlier about potatoes being really successful. Can we just talk about how, growing and harvesting potatoes in terms of the benefits to learning for children?
So the potatoes are great because you start with your seed potatoes, and they can plant them in the sacks, and the leaves grow very quickly, and then you have to keep covering over the leaves with some more soil, so that's quite fun to do as well. And then of course they all grow out again, and they need to fill it up till they get to the top. And then the best bit is when you actually turn the sack out and you hunt for the potatoes, and it's like looking for gold because all the little potatoes are very hidden in the soil, and then they start to find them and they think it's absolutely wonderful. And you can do a lot of comparison of size and counting how many they've got, who's got the biggest one, and can you find a really small one. So it's great, and they have seen the whole process of that as well. And then we went on to wash them and cook them so that they could actually eat them.
I think what's amazing about this photo is it's not staged. We haven't told them to lay, and then just you can see exactly what they're doing is that they're comparing them in order of size, very carefully laying out their bounty. And it's a perfect counting opportunity. It's a perfect size opportunity. And actually, as I think now, we didn't have such a good crop this year, but maybe comparing year on year, how many did we get all together?
So what you're saying is that actually something that's gardening, people might think is very much sort of science and understanding the world, also has huge mathematical benefits. And I mean, I'm really struck by the level of concentration and focus there.
Yeah, and in addition, I think one of the things that we have found out through the process, and we were, Froebel was all about making links and connections between learning, and actually the talk that comes out of being in the garden. So whether it's incidental talk when you're weeding, but actually the sense of ownership, remembering, I remember being told for about a week by a whole group of children, there's onions in there the week after they planted them. So there is an enormous amount of talk. And Jackie, you were saying about how they were able to name all the plants this year.
Yeah. So where they'd been watering them, and as we'd gone along watering them, I'd say, oh, can you water the tomatoes? Can you water the courgettes? Of course, they got to know the names of the plants. That way they knew exactly what they were watering and what was growing there. They could give you a guided tour of the garden and tell you what we'd got. So that was really great, and they took a lot of ownership of it and took on a lot of responsibility for caring for the plants.
It's real people. It's real work, isn't it?
Yes.
It's not.
Yes.
So, this isn't. They are. It isn't play, is it? This is serious work.
Yes.
Through play, actually.
Yes.
I think as well, the fact that you use real tools with the children is significant as well, isn't it?
Yes.
It isn't plastic.
No. And for some children, that's a really big attraction, that they get to use proper tools.
Yes.
So here they were, on the left, they were planting onions, and they were using the piece of string to form a straight line so that they could see where they were going to plant them. We were counting out how many onions we were planting because they needed to be spaced carefully. So there's all that to think about, and how deep they need to go. And on the right, they're using the dibber to plant some beans. So again, it's all about pushing it in far enough so that you've got a suitable hole to put your bean into, and you put one bean into each hole and spacing them out again. So there's a lot of mathematical concepts going on there.
One-to-one correspondence, isn't it? One bean in one hole.
Yes, absolutely. This was the herb patch. So we did have our herbs planted in the garden initially, and some of them started to take over a bit. So we decided we wanted to transfer them into some pots, and actually they're more useful that way, because if you want to look at a plant, you actually can take it to where you want it. If you want to use it for a group time, as a sensory thing, then you can take it indoors to do that. And the children actually came and took over this activity, and they started filling up all the pots and transferring the plants for themselves.
You're talking about transporting the herbs. Do you want me to go to that slide and come back to Dane?
Yeah, that would be a good idea.
There we go.
Yeah. So they made all their own decisions. They worked out how they were going to transport their pots once they'd filled them. So they went and got the wooden trolley and stacked them all in there, including Dane.
Yeah, I can see that, yes.
And I think this whole concept of freedom with guidance, I think there's a need sometimes to garden in a very controlled way. So I think we've all, as practitioners, done the seed in a pot, and everybody's had their own seed. And maybe if somebody overwaters their seed, which is probably kept out of reach for safety and it's not knocked over, that actually their seed doesn't grow, we just swap another one in so that they have that chance of success. And the children aren't really learning about what a plant needs to grow, but by learning firsthand and failing in a supportive way, actually that's really important. It's just so much more real. And actually I think we've all made steps forward about actually, yeah, the children can care for them. We weren't sure about that at first. We thought, will this get trampled? Will it get dug up? But actually with that really strong guidance at the beginning, then they were able to take it on, and actually their informed decisions were amazing. So I think that has been a major shift in our practice as a result of this project.
Giving the children more freedom.
Absolutely. But the guidance has to come first.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yes. And I think as well that respect for living things, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we might just go back to Dane as head gardener. What a wonderful picture.
You'll see Dane in a lot of photos, because just from the very beginning, he was desperate to be involved, and he was so passionate about it. He returned to it time and time again. Whenever Jackie was in the garden, he was by her elbow. And I think, for him, the real attraction was using tools. He really, really wanted to use those. And I think he just kind of got it. He was very calm when he was in nature, and he was just so determined. We have some perennial weeds in some of our borders that we were trying to pull out, and when you're kind of at that point where you're going to give up, Dane was still going, and he managed to get them up in one piece that was comparing how long they were, and it just, his learning was just phenomenal as a result of gardening. And I think, you know, Jackie appointed him head gardener, and it was a very well deserved title.
And he clearly in that photo also quite likes immersing himself within the garden.
Yes.
Goes back to that from you know, the kindergarten, garden for children and of children, isn't it? He really is.
Absolutely, yeah.
Within the garden. And I've obviously seen photos of children in bare feet, and you know, would you like to sort of explain our rationale for allowing that?
So it comes from the children. They want to be outside, and actually within that garden we have a range of quite interesting textures. We have some natural surfaces, we have some artificial surfaces, and it became a thing that we discussed as a team. It was like, oh, I'm not happy with this, I'm not happy with it. And actually the reason that we weren't happy was because we were fed up of having to put the shoes and socks back on at the end of the session. But it's just a bit of time to train the children to put their own shoes and socks on, a bit of guidance, a bit of risk assessment beforehand to make sure that they weren't going to harm themselves by going barefoot, and actually exploring those textures. And it just became something that they did in the garden.
Absolutely. And what about, you know, involving parents in that? Did you have any sort of issues with parents not comfortable with children bare feet?
No, not really.
I think we explained how we went about it. You know, I think actually the parents were pleased because it did teach them to be more independent in putting their shoes on. So that's a win when you're getting out of the house in the morning. I think, you know, talking about what we do in the garden with parents, we have a celebration at the end of the year where we say goodbye to our leavers, and actually that's always held in the garden, and it's really nice when it's at its absolute loveliest to spend some time there, and then the parents get to see how hard the children have worked. And we've had donations of plants, and working in partnership with some of our parents who are very keen gardeners. So Jackie had sussed out which parents gardened as well.
Thank you very much. And we can see here Eleanor loving the hose, and there's a story behind that, isn't there?
Yes, I mean, Eleanor loved the sensory side of the garden, and particularly of the water. When we got the new hose, it was very hot weather, and the children found it great to spray each other with the hose.
The power.
Yes, absolutely. But also, you know, we're guided towards using it to water the garden, and so this was a daily chore as well. So it became part of the routine of what we do, that every afternoon we water the garden. And they were always keen to come and help, and particularly Eleanor enjoyed that side of it.
Again, it's that concentration, isn't it? That you don't always see on, you know, children aged 3 and 4.
Again, you know, just enjoying that sensory experience of the water. And the hose had quite a good attachment to it that made the water spray in different ways. So actually they quite like testing that out as well.
And I think just looking at this photo of Holly, actually, you know, she's somebody who had been immersed in the project for 2 years, so been very, very involved. And actually the care with which she is planting those plants in the 2nd year. And this is something that actually we found was really successful, is rather than starting everything from seed, which is very, very worthy, but having some plants that are ready to go is actually really useful, because the children can see the growth quicker. They're easier to transplant, and they just really get things started, which is easier to engage the children quicker, particularly if they haven't seen it before, because they don't have to wait as long. But
so
actually,
it's that balance of seeds and ready plants.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the longer term things like onions, which actually take months and months and months to grow. So it's having a balance of all of those. Across the year too. But I mean, you know, the care that's taken to get those plants out from that tiny little tray.
Absolutely.
And to position them, you've got to work out how big the hole is. So again, there's capacity. You've got to really use your fingers in a very dexterous way.
Yeah, fine motor skills. Eat your heart out.
Yeah.
And you talked at the beginning about in Fravel's garden, the children all had a little plot each, which obviously we haven't done. We've done.
No, we discussed this a lot, didn't we, Jackie?
Yes.
We had, whether that was achievable to have in a limited space, to have individual gardens. But actually what came out of it was more the care of individual plants.
Yes. Here we took some cuttings from the mint. And the children each had their own cutting to take home. So we kept them in nursery for a little while to ensure that they were quite established, and then sent them home for them to care for at home. So they'd each got their own plant to care for.
That's another nice way of linking home and nursery as well, isn't it?
And I think the parents feel they can see how well their children have cared for the plant. There are a few comments that go along the lines of, "Oh, I better look after that." It's like, no, the children will look after that for you.
They're the experts, they'll show you.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. This is, obviously we were away from nursery for part of the year this year. And when we returned, the surprise of surprises in our slightly overgrown garden was this beautiful sunflower, which we're not entirely sure where it came from. But again, to see that cycle of life and death, we did have some sunflowers in the garden the year before. We spent a lot of time exploring the seed heads, and I guess one just landed in the right place and started to grow. And similarly at the top, you've got the cherry tomatoes, which also grew from seed. Where the plants were, and I guess that's a bit of a picking them when they're ripe, they squidge, fall onto the floor, and grow new plants. So actually, that was a really nice bonus. And again, talking to the children about where they came from as well, and the thought that a sunflower seed might have come from a bird was quite amusing as well.
I'm sure. And this sunflower has now died, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. Yeah,
been explored. And
we've saved some of the seeds that we're hoping to use again next year.
So they're seeing that cycle, aren't they?
Yeah.
And just to finish with talking about utter engagement, this is 3 of our boys, including Dane. They found a snail in the garden and bought a selection of goodies from the snack table to see what the snail preferred, and spent hours in that position watching the snail. So absolutely taking on the spirit of nature.
Absolutely.
And again, those levels of engagement, these are not staged photos.
No, and they're close observation as well, isn't there?
Absolutely, absolutely. They were there for half an hour, maybe, a really long time.
Just watching. And do we know what the snail preferred?
It was the nectarine.
The nectarine was popular, yes. I can imagine that she wouldn't be that keen on the breadstick. Thank you very much indeed. That was really fascinating. As you can see, the benefits of gardening and a little bit about how you can do it really quite simply without a lot of money. But the actual learning for the children and the development for their that this can bring about is worth every little bit of soil that you get under your fingernails. Thank you.